Good afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and call the Public Safety Committee meeting for Tuesday, July 26th to order. The first item on the agenda is an update from the Grand Rapids Police Department. Chief Winstrom. Also, actually, before I get started, I'd like to take an opportunity to introduce one of the newest members of the Public Safety Committee, and that is the Reverend Dr. Willie Golston II, who is, again, was recently appointed. He represents the 2nd Ward. I know that if you want to take an opportunity to tell, I guess, your colleagues and everyone else a little bit about yourself.
Surely, Willie Golston II happened to be goodness, where am I? I'm here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've been here 7 years. I was trying to count how long I've been here. But I'm truly excited about the opportunity to serve on the Public Safety Committee. I've been engaged in the community. I serve as a pastor at First Community AME Church, but been very engaged serving on the PCAT. Also, I've done some clergy on patrol in the past. I've done some work with Cure Violence, and truly just serious about making Grand Rapids better, and thankful for the opportunity.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here. Chief?
Thank you, Commissioner Jones and committee, for having me today. I gave a lengthy presentation to committee a whole this morning regarding my assessment of the police department and plans moving forward. I'm not going to repeat that. However, I do want to go over, and I would like to make it a routine thing in Public Safety Committee to go over crime data with you to see, measure how we're doing as a city. Looking at year-to-date homicide numbers, you'll see here an increase of 7 since the same time last year. Fortunately, we are falling short of historic highs from 2020. The aggravated assaults and auto thefts have risen steadily over the past 2 years, driven mainly this year by the thefts of Kias and Hyundais, which are accounting for a large amount of thefts in the past few months. Our detectives are doing an excellent job investigating all crime and doing an incredible job bringing violent criminals to justice. Officers in the street are doing a great job as well. As you can see, on average, the Grand Rapids Police Department confiscates 1.5 illegally possessed guns every day. We've made an average this month of at least 1 arrest a day for possessing stolen motor vehicles. And what these numbers show is that our officers are fully engaged and focused on reducing violence. I mentioned earlier today that just this Sunday we had a stolen Kia Ram, one of our squad cars. Fortunately, the officer is going to be okay. 4 individuals were taken in custody, and among those 4 individuals, there were 2 illegally possessed handguns. And these are the kind of offenders we need to hold accountable for their actions, preferably before they have an opportunity to use those handguns. Crime data is a very valuable tool as we determine resource allocation. The story I told earlier today is we put this map up, we call it a heat map, and you can see the concentration in red being more concentration of violent crime, and there was not one captain or deputy chief in the meeting with us that was surprised by this area, because, as I said, historically this is where violence was. So we're looking to create a whole of government response, the police doing what we can through the DICE program, and engaging with really everyone else to see who else can help in these areas. Our DICE, or Data Informed Community Engagement Program, is based on the idea of identifying areas that could benefit from additional resources, engaging with residents and other stakeholders about the issues we see, working together for improvement. The service area captains, 2 of whom are with me today, East Service Area Captain Terry Dixon and South Service Area Captain Joe Trigg. They spearhead DICE, and they create service referral tracking numbers to monitor their team's activities, and the captains connect directly with stakeholders, and the program gives them the opportunity to create more community engagement opportunities for the officers that work in those service areas, as well as the sergeants. We did one program, culminated today. The Heartside Park program was not generated by violent crime data. It was actually generated directly by pleas from the Heartside Park community. asking that we do something about what they saw is open-air drug activity, which was driving an unsafe feeling in the community, as well as even violent crime. As I've said publicly many times, I don't think that arresting drug addicts is the best thing to do, either for a community or for the person addicted to drugs, but I'm all for arresting people that are financially profiting out of keeping those individuals addicted to drugs, especially when it's driving crime in the area. So we began our enforcement portion of our operation this morning at 10 a.m. And since 10 a.m., we've been in Outside Park and the surrounding areas. We've, after a lengthy investigation of narcotics activity in the area, we've secured 10 arrest warrants, which after this, I'll get an update to see how many have come in. But even if someone saw this on the news and heard that, knows that I'm a drug dealer working in Heartside Park and I think there might be an arrest warrant for me, so I'm going to flee the area, I'm going to call that a win too, because we don't want them peddling drugs in Heartside Park or in Grand Rapids at all. I do anticipate seeing an immediate drop in criminal activity, but we didn't end there. As part of the DICE operation, like I said, it's community engagement. We want to make sure that what we're doing is embraced by the community and having a positive effect on the community. So what we know is that when you take the drug supply out of an area that has been so consistently been receiving steady stream of legal drugs, it can have unintended consequences medically, even on individuals with dependencies in the area. So what we did this morning, too, is we've contacted our local missions, downtown service providers, and the harm reduction organization RED Project, so that we could mitigate the potential impact, the disruption of the drug supply on those with dependencies. I'm going to ask East Service Area Captain Terry Dixon to come up for a brief update on his DICE operation, which is just starting to get underway.
Hello, Commissioner Jones, committee members. Once we had the data before us, the next task was to determine what the boundaries would be. As you can see on the map behind me, the boundaries were north on Quigley, to the south Cutler, west to Buchanan, and then down to Division to the west, and then all the way down with that Division Avenue corridor down to 28th Street. The Quigley, Cutler, Buchanan, and Division area, we have determined that, based on the data, we were finding a lot of assaultive gun crimes, and that is where the hub of all the criminal activity, not all of it, but the majority of criminal activity was taking place. And then it would trail down that Division Avenue corridor. From there, that is how the boundary lines were drawn up. The next step was to contact residents within that geographical area to inform them, to engage them. So basically, our special response team and other officers, we made foot patrols an assignment. They ended up contacting or knocking on over 524 residents. Basically, what they would do, the script kind of went like this. We have identified that there has been an elevated level of crime, serious crime in this area. We would like to partner with you. How can we come alongside you to help reduce the crime? And then based on that, that would kind of open up the floodgates of the conversation for those who answered the door. That would open up the conversation, and from there, we would determine what the citizen was looking for, what they're not looking for. Some of the results from those conversations were, or from the knocking of the door, 225 people out of the 524 did not answer the door, so there was no answer there. 63 had basically reported that they saw no issues with what was happening in their community, no issues with the police. 236 either wanted more law enforcement in the area, and they began to discuss some of the criminal activity that was taking place in their neighborhoods. It became very specific regarding shots fired into homes of neighbors right next to them, to some bars that they were having some issues with. There were many different complaints, but at the end of it, they would have liked to see more police presence. So that equated to about just short of half of the doors and the residents that we had knocked on. That also continued, the community engagement also continued with speaking with the leaders of the Garfield Park Neighborhood Association and also the business owners with the Burton Heights Business District. So I met with all of them. The bottom line for me was during this engagement, what we were looking to do, what I was looking to do here is inform, let them know that we are having an issue. Figures I would turn it off. Okay. But then as far as the engagement portion of it, how can the citizen, how can the business owners come alongside of us? What suggestions do they have of us, or can they bring to help us? And some of the things that were covered were they could call and contact Silent Observer. So we would, that responsibility would be bestowed upon the residents, that if they see something, say something. In the form of keeping them safe, they could call and contact Silent Observer, which they can keep their anonymity if needed. Or they could call 911. Some other things that business owners or even residents can do is set up cameras. And then based on whatever takes place, they can allow access to those cameras to law enforcement to help us combat crime for investigative purposes. And then the other thing that we had discussed also is since these residents and businesses were in the DICE area, I'm in the process of putting together a placard, if you will, of a DICE zone. You are in a DICE zone, something similar to the old school neighborhood watch placards. So I'm having those drawn up. I'm going to have, I'm not really sure how many, but a lot of them made up. So you're going to see some of those. So the key here was to have it interactive. Can't be all just police, but we were trying to have it go both ways, and having the associations and also the residents themselves come alongside police. There were very few that said they don't want police in the area at all. I think there were less than 10. That community engagement will continue on August 2nd. I will be meeting or having a booth at a Garfield Park Neighborhood Association for National Night Out, where I hope to speak with even more residents during that particular event. And then the other piece of DICE, obviously, is the engagement. The engagement is the law enforcement arm of this project. During that, we launched it on Saturday. Saturday, this few days ago, we ended up finding that particular effort futile based on the weather, unfortunately. So once we began the operation itself, we realized that shortly thereafter, before we could even get it off the ground, the rain had come in, making people scatter. So we weren't able to literally be effective. We only had 2 traffic stops, plus an attempt on a 3rd traffic stop where a Kia had fled from us. Based on the conditions and the amount of pedestrians and traffic, that particular pursuit was terminated right away. And then we started answering calls for service assisting patrol operations before calling that operation due to the rain, due to the inclement weather at around 11 o'clock that night. Both efforts of community engagement and enforcement will continue. This will go on for about another 3 months. During that entire time, there will be adjustments made, there'll be assessments made, where can we adjust if we need to, what more community engagement can can we do, and what more enforcement. So it will be an adjustment the whole period through, and then at the end of the 3 months, we'll evaluate and then go from there. I do want to say that the whole focus of this is to create a safer Burton Heights, Garfield Park neighborhood area. That is the goal. We're trying to preserve life. It is unfortunate, based on the chief's slides that he showed earlier, 16 homicides that took place in the city. A quarter of those took place in the East Service area, and that's unacceptable to me. One loss of life is one too many, and that's my goal, is to reduce it down to 0 if I can. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate it. Thank you, Captain Dixon. I'm going to ask Captain Trigg to come up, discuss the beginning efforts he's having around Eastern and Martin Luther King District.
Okay, like I mentioned, good morning, or good afternoon now, I guess. Same program, it's just different boundaries. As you see, my boundaries: to the north, it's Thomas; to the south, it's Prince; to the west is Henry; and to the east is Fuller. So that's my area. That's been identified as where there's a high uptick of gun crime. So did the same theory, same principles. Took our SRT unit. They went door to door in that neighborhood. We made contact with 571. We knocked on 571 doors. 250 answered, and basically same questions. Kind of what are you seeing in the area? How can we work together to kind of reduce the crime in the area? 30% talked about officer presence, just the sense of security that brings. About 20% talked about the gunshots every night. And then you had another 15 that just talked about violent crime in general. They talked about, we know it's nothing new to the businesses that have, historically there's been some issues surrounding. They identified those businesses that we were already aware of pretty much. So it just kind of drives home the point that these have been issues for a while, but we need to look at a different approach, which I think the engagement part is going to help with. At least it's another approach for us to try, since we haven't tried it yet. As Captain Dixon mentioned, the next phase was to reach out to my neighborhood organizations and explain the DICE program to them, let them ask their questions, got buy-in from them. They had very good questions, so much so that we've set up a second meeting for August 11th. But I wanted them to get that information initially as soon as possible, take that information back to the residents, and then to bring that back to the August 11th meeting to have it many residents come as possible, so we can engage and figure out if they have any questions or concerns moving forward. What we want to, ways the community could help, like Captain Dixon mentioned, a lot of this is redundant, but see something, say something, that's big. But I think the engagement part helps, where I want to be able to engage the community to give them the confidence to see something, say something. I think that starts with having a good relationship and trust, know that we're going to be responsible with that information and use it for good use. I'm also attending the National Night Out events. It's on August 2nd. I am bringing as many officers to those events as well. I have 3 in my service area. I plan to 10, because that's all part of the engagement process. Relationships aren't built overnight, so I understand it's a process, and I know my officers have buy-in. Officers want to get out of the cars. They want to engage. They run call to call, go into some of the high tense situations. They enjoy these events, and I want people to realize that and see that they genuinely do. As you mentioned, after we institute this and we bring some enforcement to these areas, we're going to reevaluate down the road, see what data it's given us, and see how to evaluate if it worked. If it's something else we need to try, we're open for anything. So, and to take that information back to the community. What do they think? How have they seen with the officer presence? Because, like I said, 30% talked about officer presence. So, and I think that's big. I know at times it doesn't necessarily mean you want that presence on you, but I think it does bring a security to that. And I want to expand that door to door. This was, we still had, I think it was 45% that didn't answer the door. So I would like to follow up there, and this is obviously going to branch out to a larger zone eventually as well. So, but that's the program in a nutshell. I think you got to have buy-in from the community and from the police department, just like any relationship in this world. Together it works. If not, it's adversarial, and it's not going to be as clean, as smooth as it can be. So that's the goal, is to get the buy-in. We want to provide a safe community. The community wants a safe community to live in. So we've got the same goal. And the communication part, I think, is going to help with understanding that, how we go about it, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you, Captain Trigg. Like I said earlier today, so there's the community and there's the police, but we still can't do it alone. There's a lot more. I mentioned the whole of government approach. Talking to the other city agencies over the past week, there's this agreement that a lot of them want to attend these DICE meetings so that we can look at this data, we can look and say we're seeing a spike of violence here. Who else can help? Is it assistance from the Parks Department, assistance from mobile GRs? Is there some way we can change the roads? Is there some service, a lot that needs to get cleaned up, a vacant house that needs to be secured, whatever? We want other services that can be provided, because, as I've said before, the police department's part of the solution, but they're not the only part of the solution. So we're really excited because I feel a lot of support within the city, the other city agencies, and I think working together we're going to have a real positive impact. So that is my shortened presentation, but happy to take any questions. I should mention too, joining us as well is Deputy Chief Christian Rogers.
Thank you very much, Chief. Colleagues, any questions? Commissioner O'Connor, nothing? No? Other colleagues? Chris?
I just want to say thank you for all your hard work and taking the leadership, and your plans seems great, and I wish you all the best, and you have my wholehearted support.
I appreciate that very much.
If I may, I echo those statements, and having been involved as long as I have, this is like the exact culmination of things we've heard in the community for a long time, and now it's there, so I'm really happy. You guys are kicking it. Great.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Anybody else? Any other colleagues? No? Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is an update from the Grand Rapids Fire Department. Good afternoon, Chief.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the Public Safety Committee, thank you very much for allowing me to present on our annual report for 2021, as well as our strategic plan, which takes us through 2025. The city's mission, vision, and values are overriding over all departments within the city and all divisions. The Grand Rapids Fire Department, I believe, fits very well underneath the mission, vision, and values with our own that we hold near and dear to us alongside the cities. In our 2021 annual report, I have a letter, and some of the highlights of that letter touched on the coordination of our COVID response during 2019-20, our appreciation for our emergency managers' leadership within our organization and citywide, and also the fact that we are moving our department forward in our licensure attempt to try and provide better services to the citizens of the city of Grand Rapids. We show here a trending decrease in fire incident casualties, both to civilians and firefighters, as well as fatality rates. You can see that in 2021 we had 0 fatalities, which was a big relief from our 2020 number, which spiked at 9, which was our all-time high. That resulted in 9 fire fatalities from 5 different incidents, with 1 having 4 fatalities. That trend is something that we hope to continue, and it's done through our prevention efforts, as well as through our training and our efforts in public information.
We do track property saved rates. You can see that that number is a very high percentage at 95.5, and our property loss rate, and we do that by estimated values of structures that we respond to. You can also see that we responded to just under 24,000 incidents in 2021. I'd like to hit on a couple different areas within the organization. Our special, under our response model, special operations. So we concentrated in 2021 on our water rescue and dive team, getting them trained up to a significant level. Again, the emergency medical training, along with our Task Force 1 involvement, our HOT team involvement, and a large-scale high-rise incident training that we just culminated. Under hazardous materials, which you'll also have a presentation on just after mine. Hazardous materials makes up a large percentage of our special responses, with just over 200 responses annually. We were limited in our amount of training that we could do during COVID, but we were able to purchase some new protective equipment, which you'll hear more about, and also maintaining our relationships with Region 6 partners. In our training division, we also brought on a candidate physical ability testing method, which we are now using to, as part of our continuous hiring process. We were able to concentrate on some fire officer training and also using some state-funded fireworks training dollars to provide leadership and resiliency training. In our prevention division, we concentrate on community risk reduction. So we look at and focus on the highest risk buildings, and we also look at those buildings, which we're able to do through our operational permit program. We did have a fairly large number of fire alarm suppression system reviews as a result of the heavy building that's going on in the city. Again, we are proud that we did not have any fire fatalities, and that our number of fire-related injuries to civilians and firefighters also decreased. Our RSP program, or our residential safety program, we were initiating a self-install program as a result of COVID. We are also looking at different ways of continuing our implementation of those smoke detectors within homes, and we continue to build on that number at 65,104 alarms installed since 2013. Wellness is an important part of our organization. Our GRFD members and their families annually participate in the 9/11 stair climb, and we get a very good participation level there. We also concentrate on O2X, and we were able to bring in some professional trainers from the military that were able to really give our people some very good information on health, wellness, and body mass, all those kinds of things that really work to make us a more coordinated and fit fire department. We also coordinate with the city's wellness director and are able to provide information through her to our department. Under support services, we have gone to a annual recruitment model, or I should say a continuous recruitment model. We have our website up and active, joingrfire.com. And the recruitment team is led by Assistant Chief Eric Freeman, and mainly comprised of suppression personnel who work on their time off to bring a high caliber of applicants to our organization. We study our critical performance measures, and you've seen these before. The metrics that we study, this is over a 9-year period, and we do see a dip in distribution, which is the orange line. That dip in distribution is a result of our recalculation of trying to measure that performance metric, and that distribution is the ability to get the first unit on scene within a benchmark goal. The other is concentration, is the ability to assemble an effective response force, and reliability is the percentage of time the unit is available to answer calls in their own district. Distribution, that measure also tends to trend downwards, as you'll see some gap analysis that I'll talk about in a minute here. Under our incident data, you can see a climb in EMS-related incidents. They currently make up just over 61% of our total call volume, and those incidents over the last 5 years have increased roughly 12%. Our fire incidents trend a little up and down. We tend to average just under a fire a day right now. That's in a structure fire a day right now, and we tend to spike up and down from that number. This is a performance gap analysis that's done, and we do value this information through our accreditation model. But right now, we can see that this is a representation of the Kalamazoo district. And this is where we have a lot of our issues when it comes to distribution. So we're down at around 52% right now, and that goal should be at 90%. And so the issue lies in the farthest southern coverage of that district, that we do not have a station that is able to get to that area within that distribution time, within the proper amount of goal. And what we're doing to try and correct that is we are continue to look for property in that southern portion of the city, not near the boundary, but a little bit north of there, so that we can provide coverage to that area at a better measure. The effective response force coverage in the outlying districts continues to be a challenge. Our Chester reliability at 69%, and that's because when that vehicle tends to get pulled out of that district more often because it's centrally located. And Kalamazoo, as well as Colville and LaGrave and Leonard, those are all the ones that are on the outlying edges of the city's perimeter. Those are the ones that tend to have the most growth right now and also the most increased in risk. And I only have one slide here on our city strategic plan. I'd like to say that this is our fourth strategic planning effort for the fire department. We continue to be able to hone down our planning process and make it much more efficient, create a very simple way of being able to measure our performance and align with our plan. And our fire department's plan aligns very well with the city's strategic plan. So we always look at ways that we're able to dovetail with the city's strategic plan, but there are definitely some areas where we need to be independent. Our mission, vision, and values continues to stay consistent. We did make one small change to our mission by adding the word entire to the community line in order to be more inclusive and to be more equitable. I am done with our presentation, but I do appreciate the time that you've awarded us, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Colleagues? No? Please.
One question, Chief. On your EMS calls, I live right by Colville, so I hear those guys going by every day, several times. I'm wondering, would it be more efficient if the fire department had ambulance service? I know I don't want to ruffle any feathers out there. I know a lot of private guys, but for the efficiency and safety of the public.
We are facing some challenges these days with the model that we're running within the city of Grand Rapids, and those challenges are that we rely on 2 private ambulance services to supply our advanced life support. The challenges become that those people are having hiring problems just like anybody else in the workforce, and what it's resulting in is our increased on-scene times, so that our people in the city of Grand Rapids, they're getting our emergency response from the fire department, and we're getting there in a very quick manner. The follow-up from the EMS agencies to be able to get us an advanced life support rig there when people are having a true emergency, a heart attack, difficulty breathing, those on-scene times for us are beginning to get very long. It's not uncommon these days for us to wait 15, 20 minutes for an ambulance because they are short-staffed, they're working on it, and we've been meeting with them to try and understand and assist where we can, but it's just a problem with the system. So my answer is, as your fire chief, I would be much more comfortable having all those resources in-house. I would be much more comfortable doing that and being able to know that I can provide those services when needed under my control. That's not the system that was built here. That system would be very expensive right now to try and create. But at some point, I do believe that, that we need to start looking at the impacts that the current model is having on the city.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, anything? No? Okay. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it, sir.
Now I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Stevie. He is from our hazardous materials team. And Lieutenant Stevie is going to talk to you a little bit about where our hazmat program is today. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As the chief said, I'm Lieutenant Stevie with the Grand Rapids Fire Department and Hazmat team. I'm stationed out of our Martin Luther King Jr. station. That's where our hazmat team is housed at. Our hazmat team leadership is comprised of Battalion Chief Mark Norman and Captain Mike Witteveen. They're not able to be here. They're sick today, one with COVID and one with a medical procedure. And then myself, I'm the Assistant Program Manager. Underneath our scope, we have 36 hazmat technicians that serve across 3 shifts, spread throughout the city, with a majority housed at MLK Station. We also have our Hazmat 1, which is our primary hazmat response vehicle, as well as our Hazmat 2. It carries most of our equipment, and we utilize the personnel off of our Engine 2 and Platform 2, our suppression units housed at that station, to deliver the apparatus to the scene. I'm going to go over some statistics with you. And then I have some additional notes that I apologize is not on this slide, but I'll go over that with you as well. We had 22 notable responses for the team as far as a full team activation through 2021 and 2022, 4 of which were mutual aid responses. Furthermore, with our training, we were able to send 5 members out to Colorado, and this is through FEMA funding for their hazardous materials technician training. We also had 16 members attend MSP in Lansing at their Emergency Management Homeland Security Training Center for various courses for hazmat. And then we had 4 members go to Crystal Mountain for the first ever Michigan Hazmat Conference. And then we also hosted a risk-based response to battery emergencies, more specifically lithium-ion batteries. We hosted that at our training center. Here's a map covering our calls that we've had related to hazmat, and as you saw in the chief's presentation, this is one of our most heavily utilized special operations team. This data only goes to 2020, and something that I want to bring up to you is, hazmat team not only protects lives and property, but we also protect the environment, which is a very big thing that we need to consider here within the city and our communities throughout Michigan and the U.S. So environmental save rate is something that I like to discuss. However, whenever the hazmat team is activated, don't think that the environment is being impacted upon. And there's 2 different terms I want you to understand. It's a spill and a release. A spill occurs when a hazardous material exits its original container. And then a release occurs once it's exposed to the environment. And that's when the harm to the environment is occurring, so when the release occurs. So far this year, we have reported 80 different responses that we've had spills at. And those responses we bill for cost recovery. I talked with EGLE, which is the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. And I think for this year so far, we've had about 6 incidents that were reported to them, and their equivalent to the DEQ, that were beyond the reportable quantities or greater than reportable quantities. So with that information, I'd like to say that through our hazmat team, both technicians and our operations level, we do a very good job at containing hazmat incidents to just a spill alone and not releases where it impacts the environment. Some additional statistics: we purchased quite a bit of new equipment, including PPE, which is personal protective equipment. The picture there on the screen, that is our level A suits. That's what we use to go into chemical reactive atmospheres. It provides us with a vapor protective shroud around us. And that was through a Region 6 grant. And we also purchased new level B suits with integrated gloving systems, which makes it safer for the wearer as well as our members doing decon on those members. We also purchased a handful of new monitors and detection equipment, including radiation detectors through a LEPIT grant. And we purchased recently carbon dioxide monitors due to the increase of our various CO2 type responses that we're seeing in manufacturing. And then we also invested in some new trace detection for both drugs and homemade explosives. And then we also obtained a night vision scope and updated our decon process with new equipment and policies. How our team responds, it depends on the call that comes in. We break it up into 4 different risks: low, medium, high risk, and then our special risk. And that will drive our effective response force and how many personnel, both technicians and operations, are sent to the scene. You might question why the last response matrix note, special risk, is different. Only calls for an effective response force of 3 personnel. And that's because we want to minimize any attention drawn to this scene. Years ago, we were responding to our white powder scares and calls, and we didn't want to draw attention to our response to the scene, because that's what the perpetrators were hoping for, was, increase the media's attention to this incident. So we send just 3 personnel to those events. Some community hazards that we have present within Grand Rapids: Bulletin 9 sites. These are facilities that handle hazardous materials. We have 51 citywide. And the map on the left, it'll be an exploded view here, the next slide. Title 3, Section 302 sites. 46 of them, they handle extremely hazardous substances. And then we also have another Title 3, but Section 312, similar to the 302, and we have 47 of those citywide. So in total, we have 144 sites throughout the city between Title 3s and Bulletin 9s. Some additional hazards and risks that we have throughout the city are transport, road, rail, and air. We have quite a few highways, interstates that run through our city, as well as a vast rail network that comes into Grand Rapids and leaves Grand Rapids. As you saw recently, maybe in social media or the news, we had a car fire, or a rail car fire out at CSX Yard off of Market the other week, which we were easily able to mitigate with very few personnel and no injuries and no lost property. Then also the Gerald R. Ford Airport. Some additional hazards: we have the Lake Michigan water filtration plant 30 miles to the west of us, which we respond to as a hazmat team, and we have had previous incidents out there that we send the team to. Regional nuclear power facilities, again, those white powder responses are the weapons of mass destructions. And then some newer risks that we're seeing out there is chemical suicides and lithium-ion battery failures that are causing fires. Throughout Region 6, it's the region in purple there, we have various other teams that we work with on a quarterly basis through meetings and other avenues at the state. Obviously, Grand Rapids team there in the Star. Then we have Muskegon County, Ionia County, hosted at Belding Fire Department. Then there's Ottawa, Mount Pleasant, Tricom to the south of us. And then we also have a state resource, which is the 51st Civil Support Team out of Battle Creek. Some various capabilities that we have in the team: hazard classification, be it radioactive, flammable, corrosive, toxic, or biological. We do public safety sampling with biologicals and chemicals. Our leak control. Then we can also do some more in-depth analysis of what we're dealing with through presumptive product identification using some of our monitors, which I'll show you here in the next slide. And then also decontamination of both civilian victims, or if we have a mass casualty incident, or our team members. So capital purchases: previously we've been able to, through capital funding, purchase some expensive monitors, and I brought 2 of them with us. This is our Hazmat ID Elite, which was purchased in fiscal year 19 to the tune of about $55,000. And then our Gaku Progency, which was to the tune of about $50,000, and this was in fiscal year 22. And this allows us, I'm not going to explain the science to you behind it, it's even confusing for me, but it gives us a pinpoint identification of what the hazard is that we're dealing with, whereas our traditional monitoring equipment, it's more quantitative. It tells us, yep, there's something here in the atmosphere, and this is what the reading is of how much is here, but we can't tell you what it is. Whereas these monitors tell us the specific chemical or hazard or the threat that we're dealing with. Some future anticipated needs through capital purchases is a high pressure mass spectroscopy unit, which is the MX908. And that kind of fills a gap that these two monitors don't give us. These monitors work very well together. One is able to tell solids better than liquids, whereas the gray one here, the Progency, can look at liquids very easily. However, these two do not see what's in the air, what's in the atmosphere, cannot give us that identification of any airborne contaminants, whereas this MX908 device can. And the technology with this through Department of Defense has come a long ways. However, the cost of that is about $100,000. So we're looking at either capital funding, also looking at some ARPA funds potentially to get this new unit if it meets our needs. And then also our response vehicles, it's in the works through our apparatus replacement plan. For Hazmat 1 and Hazmat 2, there's no immediate need to replace these right now. It's just in our line of sight that we will eventually need to replace these to better meet the team's needs and the community needs as well. Are there any questions?
Thanks so much.
Yep, thank you.
Yep, any questions, colleagues? No? Okay, thank you very much. Our next item is an update from the Parks and Recreation Department.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and committee members. David Marquardt, Director of Grand Rapids Parks and Recreation. This morning and a little bit this afternoon, Chief Winstrom spoke about the whole of government approach, and I'm here to speak and present on one piece of that, and that is the work that we do in Parks and Recreation. And so part of our work is, of course, relates to providing healthy alternatives for our youth and families in the community to participate in. Two of those are the pools that we have across the city, Martin Luther King Park Pool, Briggs Pool on the west side, and Richmond Park Pool on the northwest side of the city. These pools are open 7 days a week. This year, we were open at the end of school, just like we are at the end of every year, June 10th this year, and we will be closing down for the season on August 22nd, just before school begins again. Because of the dedicated parks millage that voters have overwhelmingly supported, we are able to keep the fees for pool admission quite low, $1 for youth residents, which is really remarkable. In addition to that, we provide free summer day camps. We've got 4 of them this year. We've got those located at Garfield Park, Joe Taylor Park, Martin Luther King Park, and Roosevelt Park. These camps run the same duration as our pools are open, so June 10 through August 22. These camps are 5 days a week and run from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. They are free for residents to participate in. Those costs on our end are absorbed by the dedicated parks millage, and so that investment this year to run those 4 camps is approximately $263,000. We've got about 225 participants. That's a good number, and the age range for these kids is between 6 and 12. In addition to that, you've heard a little bit about the Grow 1000 employment program. We are in our 3rd year of this program now. This is a really great way in which to continue engaging youth, even at that older age, ages 15 to 24, giving participants the opportunity to be exposed to job opportunities and ultimately careers that they wish to pursue with further education. In terms of park security measures, the Chief of Police has spoken appropriately with regards to providing additional support where the police department may not always be able to provide assistance. And so we've worked closely with them and with our city's emergency manager on crime prevention through environmental design recommendations. Those are those CEPTED recommendations. And as a result of those reviews, we've updated lighting in some of our parks, of course done a significant amount of tree trimming to ensure good visual viewing into and out of our parks, and we've also begun some camera installation in some of our parks and started the implementation of that. Still working through some of the technology updates required to make those completely workable. In addition to that, we've hired private security. We've contracted with Allied Security Professionals. The city holds a contract with them. And they are patrolling primarily our downtown parks 7 days a week, Monday through Sunday. And they begin at 10 p.m. and finish their shift at 6 a.m., really providing us that overnight eyes and ears and feet on the ground for additional security patrol in our downtown parks specifically. In addition to that, we've contracted with some private security for our presence, specifically at some of our free fitness classes where we've had some participants expressing some concern about safety. Rosa Parks Circle and the classes that we host there on Monday evenings from 5 to 7 p.m. We've also installed security gates at our parking areas that we've got at 6th Street Park and Canal Parks. This is in response to some vandalism that occurred there a couple of summers ago at those locations. This year, this is a new addition. We've hired private security to have a presence at all of our pools. This really provides an extra set of eyes and ears to those pool decks so that our lifeguards are really able to provide the services that they're committed to do, protecting those swimmers and their safety. With regards to our summer day camps at Martin Luther King Park, the chief spoke a little bit about some of the concern and the uptick in violence down near Martin Luther King Park. Nothing has occurred within the park. We are grateful for that. However, we are looking at ways in which to provide additional security for our camp participants and our pool patrons. And so GRPD has committed to keeping their camera trailer stationed at this location, providing a set of continuous eyes for campers and pool patrons that are coming and going from that parking area. As mentioned, we do have a private security staff for the pool and the day camp to provide that additional support. And during those camping hours, we've got parking lot barricades that are put into place just after drop-off occurs and just after pickup, and they are pulled back again once kids are picked up from camp at the end of the day at 3 p.m. GRPD has instructed officers to have as much presence in this park as possible. So when they are doing paperwork, they are asked to do so down at Martin Luther King Park, again to provide some additional presence and support for us, and we are grateful for that. Additional support from GRPD includes stationing officers at the basketball court at the end of league play. This is summer play that the Urban League and others have organized, again, to keep people active and engaged in healthy ways within our community. We are looking for support also from GRPS. We've had conversations with them about partnering on utilizing some of their security personnel for additional patrol in our parks. They are looking at ways in which they can balance that for our use. Tentatively, they have committed to providing some additional support Monday through Friday, really between the hours of 1 and 3, when their security personnel are not as involved in some of their own security personnel work at their school site locations. And then lastly, we've got our Park Ambassador program to supplement all of this. We've got 6 Park Ambassadors that we were able to hire this year. We've run into hiring challenges like we have in many other areas. These 6 ambassadors work 7 days a week, generally 6 to 11 hours daily, depending on what we have going on. These ambassadors are assigned to roam multiple parks during their shift. Their focus primarily is on parks that have events programmed, where we've got rentals occurring, or where there might be significant league rentals or court rentals taking place. They primarily are there to provide guidance, provide direction, visitor support as needed. Of course, they are not dedicated security personnel. And then we are working with the Grand Rapids Police Department, in addition to the city's emergency manager, to provide some training for our camp personnel and our pool personnel. This started a couple of weeks ago, and we've been working with pool and camp managers and assistant managers, really covering some broad topics that range everywhere from natural hazards to human-made hazards and personal preparedness, in addition to active assailant situations and how to handle some of those. Specifically, beginning tomorrow, we'll be going site by site to get a little bit deeper into what would happen and what steps to take in the event of an emergency. That is my presentation on Parks and Recreation, and happy to entertain any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Marquardt. First question I have is, what would you say is our capacity for the summer day camps? I know the number that you provided was 225 youth. What do we have capacity for in those sites?
With the 4 sites, we've got a capacity of about 400 participants as we
Okay.
estimate it.
Okay,
Based
good.
on the areas in which we utilize in those park spaces.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And is there the thought of potentially expanding that next year to include other park sites, or is it just we're looking to concentrate on these 4?
We've been primarily focusing on these 4. We have expanded this year to 4. Last year, we were at 3. The year prior to that, we were at 2 sites only. So we have incrementally been expanding, thanks in part to the dedicated parks millage. I would say that with the uptick that we've seen actually since the beginning of camp and additional registrants that have come on board, we are likely to consider adding an additional site or 2.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Colleagues, any questions? No? Please.
Excuse me, for the members of the Public Safety Committee, especially the citizens, we had an update from the Cure Violence group today. I have the paper copies, and I'll also make the presentation available to you. The police chief also intimated that what he showed you today was an abbreviated presentation. He had a full presentation about his review of the police department that I'll also make available to you through the video and paper copies too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Marquardt. Appreciate it, sir. And our final presentation on this afternoon comes from the 61st District Court.
Good afternoon, Commissioner, committee members. I'm Tanya Todd. I'm the court administrator with the 61st District Court. I believe this is the first time the court is presenting before you. So I wanted to take time and just tell you a little bit about the jurisdiction of the court and highlight some of the ways we feel that we contribute to the community. So the 61st District Court handles all criminal cases, so the felonies that come in, eventually if enough evidence is presented, will go to the circuit court. Last year, we had about 7,700 criminal cases. That was broken down into a little bit over 1,900 felonies and 5,700 misdemeanors. We also covered general civil cases, less than $25,000, and landlord-tenant cases. We average about $4,000 for both of those last year. And our civil infraction tickets are close to about $7,000. The next items are some of the things I'm going to highlight on the next slides, but we do have 2 problem-solving courts with 3 judges, and that's a drug court and 2 sobriety courts. Bless you. I also like to mention our wedding ceremonies, because rarely do we have happy time at court, and that's one of those joyous occasions where people can come in and smile.
For you real quick, how many weddings do you perform a year?
A year. We do 2 every Friday. I will say when we were getting inundated, I used to perform them. I did 6 every Friday.
Okay.
So we try to keep at least 4 weeks in advance so people can get in and out if they want to.
Very good, thank you.
This past year, a lot of attention has been given to the domestic assault response team, or the dissolution of said team. Thank you to the city. We were able to continue that for a year. But I'm happy to say we do have a domestic assault response person still on staff. So we had to streamline our approach, especially after the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, the team would go out on site and visit people, and then that stopped. And so we've continued, but we follow up with our person to contact victims via text and email. She's reported that sometimes the email is more successful because the people are more inclined to respond in a safer mode of communication rather than someone potentially looking through their phone or whatnot. So we're having good results with that. But what's different, in case you're wondering, not much, on-site visit at time of call. So we're still contacting victims, providing resources, we're following up. The DART person goes through all of the police reports and contacts the alleged victims. And we also just recently had her texts and emails translated into Spanish. So we're offering that service as well. These are some of the resources provided to victims, but you'll just see that they're references about how-tos, different strategies, different phone numbers that victims can contact if they need more information. So how are we going to know if our DARP, I just invented that now, DARP program is working? It's going to be data. However, since it just ended about a month ago, we don't have the data with our single person providing these services. We are keeping that data. So we are still providing services to victims. I also know that the county prosecutor in Safe Haven did apply for an ARPA proposal, and if they did get approved for that, we would be involved potentially with the domestic violence court, and we could assist that way. I believe I also read that Chief said that you wanted to devote more resources to victim services as well. I mentioned the problem-solving courts. And this is a success because, as you'll see here, our last year recidivism rates, all the program participants had a lower percentage of recommitting crime, and the graduates significantly reduced. Another happy time we have at court is graduation day, when a program participant has completed their program and they finish. And so it's an intensive program. There's incentives, there's sanctions. We follow the nation and state best practices. It's about 150 pages, but suffice it to say, a team meets once every 2 weeks with the participant, the judge, the treatment professional, and the probation officer to discuss next steps and what is in the best interest of that participant. We also have, which is rare in the state here, a work crew and a work program. The judge can order the work crew, and that's mandatory, but the work program offers our defendants an opportunity to work off some of their fines and costs if they state they're unable to afford to pay those court-ordered costs. In the middle, you can see some of the areas that our work crew team and program help out, and some of the before and afters in a vertical manner, and they do a lot of good work. I believe this also allows the city to contract for services at a lower amount than if they were to get bids from outside private entities. Just some recent legislative changes. I can let you see the slides, but the big one that we're anticipating are the automatic expungements that are on the horizon. This means that individuals wishing to expunge certain offenses and are otherwise eligible will not have to file any paperwork. The case management systems will coordinate with the Michigan State Police. I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but that's beyond my purview here. But eventually, certain offenses will be automatically cleared from someone's record. One of the big projects we've been focusing on right now is eviction prevention and diversion. In 2018, we worked with community development to start our eviction prevention program. We received a $300,000 grant for 3 years. Fortunately, that program is still continuing with our partners, the Salvation Army and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. This is where we try to engage tenants with resources to pay their rent. Just recently, through a grant provided by Wells Fargo through the National Center for State Courts, we were one of 12 jurisdictions across the country to receive a grant for $307,000 for 2, we're calling them holistic facilitator positions. So rather than try to connect tenants with dollars only, we're trying to connect them with the resources that they need to overcome any root causes for their inability to have consistent payments. We have our first facilitator starting on Monday, and hopefully by the end of next week, our second facilitator. And we continue to work with community development and our partner agencies in the community. I had a data collection this morning about how we're going to collect the data, so there's a focus on that so we can look at statistics, and also a focus on sustainability. We're often known as the People's Court because the district court is where most people come if they have business to attend to, such as tickets or third parking tickets or whatnot. We believe that we're an integral part of this community and the government. I'm pleased to say that I just this morning received the results of our last year's public satisfaction survey, and it indicated that 95% of those polled said that they were treated with courtesy and respect by the judge or magistrate. 87% reported being treated with courtesy and respect by court staff, and 90% believe their case was handled fairly. You might be surprised that it's 90% because you would anticipate half of people would be displeased, if not more, with the outcome. But studies have shown that it's the way that people are treated and the fairness with the process that really affects people's belief and faith in the judicial system. So that's what I have as a brief overview, and so hopefully we can delve into any other topics at future meetings that are of interest. But if there are any other questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
Thank you, Ms. Todd. Colleagues, any questions for Ms. Todd? This is a very thorough presentation. Myself and my colleague, Commissioner Yasasi, who both serve on the liaison committee between the city and the court, had the opportunity to come together with Ms. Todd and some judges and others a couple of weeks ago, and it was very rich in terms of just learning more and more and just trying to develop a better relationship because of the critical importance that the court plays in the life of the city. So again, I'd like to open up if you have any questions. No? Okay.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner, for those comments. We also thought that that meeting was wonderful, so looking forward to many more.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. All right. And I know that is our final presentation, and so we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.